What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, a weekly panel discussion show. And as usual, we have a fantastic panel. Of course, you recognize the two gentlemen at the bottom. I will introduce them later. But first, we got to introduce the man who, since his last appearance on the show, has emerged as somewhat of a supervillain in mixed martial arts. A man who targeted on Dana White's hit list. He is they call him the Prince of Positivity, but I got a new name for him. AK Lee, AK 47 Lee.
Oh,
Alexander K. Lee.
Wow.
My man, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Listen, I'm still the Prince of Positivity. I'm positive that I want to shut the UFC down. Okay, so I'm definitely still the Prince of Positivity. Just
right.
maybe
I'll throw a black and white filter over him.
I think you have to. I think you have to.
Positively
black and white, red eyes.
Unbelievable. I'm glad I got that video taken down, guys. I got that video taken down. It took some doing.
It's that power, man.
The fact that such a powerful man would show up here on the Walkout Network, I mean, it just goes to show you how fucking great we are. So thanks, Alex, for validating us. You
guys did a great job accommodating my rider. Thank you for accommodating my rider. Yeah. It's a little unconventional because we're not meeting in person, but you sent all the M&Ms to my place in Canada, which is crazy.
Color coded, by the way.
Amazing. So I was thinking
that was a tough one, man, because I'm colorblind.
There was one or two off, but whatever.
Well, you know what? You clearly know what sort of show this is going to be. So let's go ahead and introduce the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. He is the senior editor of Sherdog.com. My man, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, man, I'm just still recovering from UFC 259. Too much of a good thing. What a great night of fights. If you told me going in that all 15 fights were going to make it through fight week, through weigh-ins, make it to the cage, I'd be like, oh man, we're in for a death march. But instead, we got some good fights, some great fights, and definitely a few things to talk about. It's a good day to be here.
And all of our doomsday predictions of COVID just savaging the card on the weigh-in day were all wrong. But let's move on to introduce the man who anchors the panel every week with the facts, the stats, the figures, and the numbers. The associate editor of Sherdog.com, also my good friend, Jay Petr. Jay, what's going on?
Well, I want to say happy International Women's Day to all of you guys. All right, let's roll with it. But in honor of International Women's Day, the stat of the week is a very, very appropriate stat from UFC 259. 9 is the stat of the week. Amanda Nunes has 9 first-round finishes in the UFC. There are only 2 fighters in UFC history all the way back just about that have gotten more, and that's Jim Miller and Frank Mir, which each have 10. Now, Royce Gracie and Vitor have a couple more, but that was back when there was no such thing as rounds. It was just fight until one of them falls over. But Amanda Nunes has more first-round finishes than Francis Ngannou. So happy International Women's Day, guys.
Absolutely wonderful stat, and that stat is now maybe just shift the outline for today just a little bit. We are going to begin with our swing or miss, and while we're talking about the greatness that is Amanda Nunes, we need to consider how great she really is. So, swing or miss, I'll begin with you, Alex. Amanda Nunes should be ranked among the greatest fighters of all time, male and female.
I mean, that's definitely a swing. I think that's been the case for a long time. I mean, well before UFC 259, probably once she knocked off Cyborg. That's why when people really started saying, okay, well, she has to be ranked among the best of the best of the best. I take some contention with, I'm saying it's a swing. I said overall to the question that's been asked to people who say that she's undisputed now they're like the greatest has to be considered among like with Khabib and John Jones and, the best of the best. For me, that's a miss. For me, that's still a miss. And it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with, I think the divisions that she competes in are not super strong. And again, not her fault. This is the same thing we say about Anderson Silva back in the day when he was dominating 185 and people were like, oh, well, why is he fighting Taos Leites and Petr Cote and that? It's not his fault. And winning those fights, not his fault. Just like it wasn't Cyborg's fault when she was running through 145. And it's not Amanda Nunes' fault that she's completely ran through what's left of 145 and what's left of 135 after, Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey, are out of business now. Out of competition anyway. So a partial swing, I should say. Maybe like a check swing. A check swing has to be in the conversation. I think anyone that doesn't include her in the top 10 is absurd. But anyone who's saying that she's definitely top 1 or 2 or 3, that I would argue with.
All right, very, very nice political bunt there from Alex. Jay, Ben,
just trying to get on base. Just trying to get on base. That's like
Anybody want to take a full swing at this ball?
Okay, at top 3, I'd be hard pressed to sell that. But top 5, it's almost impossible to not put her at least in the top 5. So I'm going to swing a little more aggressively in the conversation of the greatest ever with, Jones, Silva. You can probably put a couple in there to decide. And the reason why isn't just the fact that she's on a 12-fight win streak with the names that she has, the Shevchenkos and the Cyborgs and the Rouseys, whatever. Obviously, the Shayna Baszler win puts her in that top echelon. But anyway, she has beaten virtually every champion that's ever been worthy of being, in the discussion. Like she has in terms of Invicta, she has the win over Cyborg. She has the win over Felicia Spencer. She now has the win over Megan Anderson. I would not be surprised if Pam Sorensen, if she's she's been away since 2019, if she gets brought in to do something. Amanda Nunes could have a win over every Invicta featherweight champion. And then you look at the bantamweight champions in the UFC, she's beaten all of them. Holm, Tate, Rousey, she got those. She's got Valentina Shevchenko on the wall a couple times. If Nika Montano decides to go on a win streak and get a crack at the bantamweight title, weirder things have happened. Juliana Pena might be disagreeing, but we'll see about that. But man, we've seen fighters with win streaks. We've seen fighters that have destroyed. And it's absolutely easy to argue the divisions haven't been strong, but at the same time, she's beaten the 1s and the 2s and the 3s on all across the board. And that's something you can't say about somebody with a win streak like hers currently, like Kamaru Usman. He has a couple of spectacular wins, but in terms of like pecking order for all-time grades, I would have Nunes better because she's beaten the best that there can possibly be. Like it isn't a question of is she fighting the Bellator's best or whatever. No, she is just summarily beating and destroying anybody, and that's something.
She's finished all of the Bellator featherweight champions.
Bud, and she beat Bud back in Strikeforce Challengers, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you go. Got Bud's too.
Yep.
Spencer made it out. Spencer made it to the distance.
She did.
Yeah, Spencer did.
But her face might not have made it after like the third round or so.
Yeah, just wonder how much of her was left there once the bell finally rung. Ben, so where would you lay on this discussion? You swinging or missing at this?
I'm swinging as a top 5, and I think it's perfectly appropriate when we're having these discussions that are theoretical and ephemeral and really just for our own amusement anyway, to throw it right in alongside the men. And obviously I work for SureDog, a site whose official pound for pound rankings have a separate top 10 for men and for women. I'm one of the ones who would be fine with having one master list of both, because you're already talking about people who by definition can't fight each other in most cases. Yes, Amanda Nunes is never going to fight John Jones. Neither is Demetrius Johnson. We still compare their achievements based on how dominant they are in their own divisions, and in some cases on their adventures in divisions outside their own. I think she is a top 5 pound for pound fighter in the world right now, male or female. Well, right now she might be the top pound for pound fighter in the world, number 1. I think she's probably a top 5 all timer. When I look at all timers on resume, hers feels like John Jones to me. Where not only did they have an incredible unbeaten streak and were a dominant champion, but they beat all the other, like John Jones has beaten most of the other top light heavyweights of all time. His initial run right up to and after winning the title, where he beat 4 of the 5 previous champions badly. I mean, it's the definition of cleaning out a division, not only in the current, but just the historical sense. That's where Nunes is at right now. And really the only thing you can pick at is the strength of the divisions she's in. But you know what? Some people still hold up Fedor as a top 5 all-time fighter. And what are Fedor's 3 best wins in a row? His entire legendary career is great fight, good fight, joke fight, throughout his, even his glory days in Pride.
Very, very good points there. I've got to take a hard swing at this one. And I'll reference some of my previous work in this. Not that long ago, the few guys at the Body Lock, myself, Matt Wells, Drake Riggs, and Pat Auger, we all had to come up with our top 5 greatest of all time for a lengthy discussion. I had Amanda Nunes sitting just outside of my top 5. I gave that spot to Daniel Cormier instead, because the Cormier had this longer sustained run of success, and Nunes had a couple of losses that didn't age very well. And that's the only thing that separated them early in her career. So, I mean, if we're talking about someone who has absolutely decimated the female MMA Mount Rushmore, I think that puts you in the top spot in that bracket. And she's done such exceptional work that she should be moving over into the overall discussion of greatest fighters of all time. I mean, when you look at the odds in this one, and she delivered on that, and this has kind of been the case with her pretty much ever since the Cyborg win. And before the Cyborg win, I mean, that was the case throughout her bantamweight title challenges for the most part. So, I mean, Amanda Nunes is by far one of the best fighters, male or female, that has ever walked the face of the earth.
Now, there's something you pointed out there about the odds in this fight. I think at the end of them, they actually shifted, Nunes versus Anderson shifted to like minus 700 or so. But for most of the time, they were 10 to 1200, minus 10. So 10 or 12 to 1 favorite. Enormous, astronomical favorite. Valentina Shevchenko fighting Jennifer Maia level of massive favorite. And even at that favorite, having watched the result of this fight, of Nunes versus Anderson, thinking, I think Nunes should have been a bigger favorite in this fight. Like just to see a 7 or 10 to 1 favorite do that, you go, okay, maybe it's time to push her into those weird levels of odds range where you go, okay, maybe, you know, there's nothing there. I saw something, I think it was on DraftKings or Sportbook, or somebody was talking about how 90% of the betting came in for this fight on Anderson, and they obviously got cleaned out because Anderson didn't fare very well. Man, when you do that to somebody who even I predicted Nunes obviously was going to get the finish, I believe I said, but Anderson will put her in some danger. Amanda Nunes was the danger, and she was the danger the whole time. So, man, oh man. It was one of those different performances that even a massive favorite expecting to beat this fighter does it in that way. You go, okay, all right, something's different here.
Yeah, I think a lot of us in the media are a little guilty of talking up Anderson's chances, and not like without reason. I still think Megan Anderson's a good fighter. You know, just because she's got blown out by Amanda Nunes. Guess what? A lot of fighters have, and I wouldn't use that as an indictment of their abilities either, right? But in fairness, you know, it's kind of our job to sort of kind of figure out these narratives. We all talk about these fights. 3 title fight card. We're going to put a lot of thought and research into the 3 title fights. So for this one, when we go on, when we talk about it, when we write about it, we just can't get away with just saying, well, obviously Nunes is going to destroy her. You know, we have to find an angle. And I don't mean that we're being disingenuous. I mean, we just like to point out why this, matchup was being made in the first place, and why, Megan Anderson's could even be worthy of being considered a live dog. And so she didn't really, I wouldn't say she finished as a super live dog, but as you said, a lot of the action came in on her. Some of that probably our fault in the media. But again, I'm not taking back any of the pre-fight analysis. I think there was reason to think Anderson could be competitive, and she just wasn't. That's how these things go sometimes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we're quickly approaching the status of Amanda Nunes just getting those Harlem Globetrotter type odds. Like we're not seeing anyone on the horizon that looks like they can beat her. And of course, stranger things have happened in the sport. But the smart money says keep betting on Nunes until she doesn't feel like fighting anymore. So, all right, let's move on. Give a little love to the main event here. Jan Blachowicz upset a lot of people with a unanimous decision win over Israel Adesanya. A much more clinical fight than I think we all expected. I think there was going to be some level of destruction one way or the other, the way we thought about the X's and O's lining up here. But Jan wins a very well-fought strategic battle. And now we got to get into the question of how much respect should we be giving this man for this win? I mean, this is a champion who has been continually placed on underdog status. To have the champion at the lighter weight class move up to meet him and he'd still be the underdog says a lot. So now, how much respect should we be giving Jan Blachowicz for this win over Izzy?
Jan Blachowicz right now, this is speculative. It's just the very initial odds from Bet Online, I believe. They're the ones who put those future fights. Jan Blachowicz is a betting favorite, about minus 150 against Glover Teixeira. How about that? How he's finally getting some love on the betting. I mean, granted, when people put money in, they may decide, well, Glover Teixeira, blah, 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 and he's going to win this fight because he's got no respect. You can do a whole Rodney Dangerfield on him. Jan Blachowicz outstruck Israel Adesanya on the feet, disregarding the takedowns, the multiple takedowns he scored, the top control he put on. Before he even did that, was outstriking Israel Adesanya. I don't think any among us would have expected that. And most of our interpretations is the whole, you could almost quantify it as speed versus power. And we expected that Jan Blachowicz had the bigger, heavier shots that would do some damage, make Israel Adesanya guess a little bit, but the volume would be vastly in his favor. He'd get out, he'd get in, pop, leg kick, back out. No, that I don't know what exactly it was. I can't. I watched it again, and I just watched the fight play out, and I don't know. There wasn't really a moment. There wasn't a breaking point or any time where something changed. There wasn't a strike that hurt anybody. There was no real moment until Blachowicz got the takedown, and it was easy to get the takedown. That would have been my turning point. But until that, Jan was doing great on the feet. This is a guy I think it was Duffy who said the narrative was already being written that Jan was a kind of a paper champ. He was just holding the belt until somebody else better, more deserving, took it from him and we moved on. And kind of like like holding John Jones's purse kind of thing. That was the mentality a lot of people had in this fight. No, man, this guy at 38 years young and a former KSW great is truly legit. He is now, because of a win over a pound-for-pound guy, is now therefore a pound-for-pound talent, which is something I never would have expected. So, yeah, I am very happy that Blachowicz is favored currently in his next fight. I think that's the kind of respect that I think he deserved at the very least after that performance.
Agreed. Please go ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was going to say, I think this fight's going to age very well. I think when people go back and rewatch this fight, because I think a lot of what Jay was saying is we were waiting for a certain something to happen. There was already a lot happening in the fight, but we were waiting for, well, where's the part where Blachowicz gets frustrated and then we see kind of a flurry of Polish power where he rushes in, or where's the part where Izzy finds his rhythm and starts styling on Blachowicz and gets that flurry and hurts him. So we were waiting for something. And I like the fight as it is. I think a lot of fans did too. I didn't see too many people, just judging by social media reaction, didn't see too many complaints. It just maybe wasn't sort of the barn burner that some people were expecting, or more of a even a more active tactical fight. But I think when people watched it again for what it was, which is this really great performance by Blachowicz and a solid performance by Adesanya in a losing effort, I think then it'll go down as a very again a well liked. And in good esteem, I think. But as far as the question of, do we have to give more? No, we should not bring any respect to Jan. Okay, and this is for Jan's sake because it's been working out for him. All right, I for one have picked against him pretty much every time over the last 3 years, and been wrong many times. I think the only one I was right on was maybe Thiago Santos. Right, that's about it. That's the only guy who actually beat him. Right. But outside of that, and I'm just quickly looking at the odds. This is just on Tapology. He was the underdog in every fight except Jacare. That's wild. Yep. I'm talking about he was the underdog to Devin Clark. He was the underdog to Jared Cannonier when Jared Cannonier was on, going down to 185. And in between fight, he was underdog to him. He was the underdog to the Jimmy Manoa fight. I mean, kind of made sense. He lost him before. That's not horrible. He was the underdog to Nikita Krylov. Okay, so we could go through this all day. And somehow even getting those wins, it got worse. I'm looking back at those. Those were minus 150. Luke Rockhold, over 2-1 favorite.
It was a huge favorite. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So somehow the more he won, the odds, I guess because he was getting better opponents. Yeah. And it ended up getting worse. The odds, it's so crazy. And so let's give him no respect. And I think as long as we keep doing that, he's going to keep having success. It is wild. He's the ultimate spoiler. He's the ultimate spoiler.
He was a 2-1 underdog to Luke Rockhold, moving up a weight class, fresh off getting date raped by Yoel Romero.
Oh my!
Like the horrible knockout, the non-consensual kiss sends Rockhold up to 205, and he's a huge favorite over Blachowicz. Like I've not learned my lesson. Yeah, he's been the underdog in 9 of his last 11 fights. He's won 9 of those fights. And if John Jones decides to go back and take what he believes is rightfully his, Blachowicz will probably be like a plus 500 underdog against him or something crazy like that. And it'll be silly. I think it was Jay who said, I don't care who Blachowicz is fighting next. Like, I'm just going to go with him because I'm tired of being wrong. I'm kind of leaning that way myself, but it's a fantastic story. He seems like one of just the most genial guys. And that doesn't matter as far as what's happening inside the cage, but before the cage door closes and after it opens again, it is kind of nice to have just what seems like a good dude to talk about and to have talk about himself. If he ends up fighting Glover Teixeira next, that will be one of the all-time nice guy versus nice guy fights in like MMA history. And one where I will just hate to see either guy lose.
That's the NMF title then. And here's a question that I guess I'll pose to Ant as he weighs in on the issue and comes back to life. Obviously he deserves respect. I'm sure that you can agree on that one. And I'm curious how much respect should be on his name. But there was something curious. There was an anomaly. I felt that 2 judges awarded 10-8 rounds to the fifth round. And I'm not sure about that. Maybe that was too much. They were giving him too much respect at that moment. And that was strange. But I don't know. What do you got, Ant?
As far as the 10-8s, that was just several layers of stupid. This just makes absolutely no sense. Like granted, he very clearly won that fifth round, and dominated position and whatnot, but he didn't actually start really hitting him until the last like 10 seconds, maybe, where he was able to posture up. That does not constitute a 10-8 round. And even then, he didn't like bust his face open and really absolutely destroy him during that time. I mean, Adesanya showed up to that press conference looking like he just woke up. Like, he did not look like he got into a fight with a much larger man and took some shots along the way. He looked fine. So there was nothing in there to warrant a 10-8. But as far as the level of respect to put on his name, I think this was even more impressive than if he were to just go and flatline Izzy. Because that's the way we all thought it could happen. The Polish power, we kept talking about the Polish power. And while I definitely give credit to him having power in his hands, we also got to keep in mind where he built that reputation off of. That was Luke Rockhold, who is one of the chinnier fighters, moving up a weight class on top of that. And then Corey Anderson, who hasn't been known to take the best shot either. So when you're building the idea of power behind that, that's kind of a flimsy foundation, but he didn't even use that power necessarily to win. He used strategy. He on top, he was gassed too by the second round. Maybe he was clearly gassed, but found a way like a true champion. He just found a way to win and did everything he needed to do at exactly the right time. So the fact that he was able to get a strategic win, I think is more positive for him and his legacy than if he were to just go and just be the bigger guy and just punch him and put him to sleep. So I think we need to be considering Jan Blachowicz beyond just this powerful striker. And this is a complete mixed martial artist who is able to adjust his game plan on the fly. You love to see it. And speaking to like him as a person, at least my interactions with him, I was there at 239 where he fought Luke Rockhold, and to the level of disrespect that he was getting coming into that fight, and just the smug look he had on his face the entire time, as he's got this smirk as everyone was interviewing him, and Rockhold is talking trash to him, talking about how small his feet are and all sorts of foolishness. And Rockhold did that submission radio interview where he pretty much just totally dismissed him, just so blatantly, so flagrantly dismissed Blachowicz. I mean, you love to see a guy who has that demeanor, who has faced that level of disrespect and the odds pointing against him to succeed the way he has, and force you to recognize what a complete talent he is. So yeah, Jan gets all the credit. That was a fantastic performance.
Can I throw one thing onto what you just said?
Sure.
Well, I love that you mentioned that the way he won, it tells us more. It sends a better message than if he just flatlined Izzy with a huge punch. It also helps that he didn't start leaning on his wrestling until the 4th and 5th round. Because if he had just blanketed Izzy for 5 rounds, exactly what the narrative would have been coming out of certain parts of the fandom. Well, he was scared. That was the only way he could win. Izzy would have knocked him out. He just laid on him. I think it's beautiful that no matter how you scored the first 3 rounds, he was at the very least holding his own with a guy that we're talking about being certainly one of the dazzling, maybe one of the greatest strikers in MMA history. And he stood fearlessly in front of him for 3 rounds, then leaned on the size, the strength, the legendary Polish heavy positional top game of, to kind of seal things up. Like it was about as well as he could have done just for his own stock in that performance, I think. Like
Definitely.
Short of a finish. Yeah.
Great point there. All right, so now let's move on to the next title fight, probably the most memorable for all the wrong reasons. Aljamain Sterling, now the UFC bantamweight champion, after receiving an illegal knee to the head that forced him out of the contest. Petr Yan gets disqualified and relinquishes his belt. So I'll kick it to you first, Jay. So let's say you've got the same haircut, but you got a tan. You are Mark Smith. How do you handle that situation?
I think there's only a couple ways to really approach it. And I think the first of it is using the language of the rules. It's what type of foul was this? That's one of the very clear indicators as to how to proceed in the unified rules is what kind of foul is this? Is this an accidental foul or is it a intentional foul? And if it's an accidental foul, you would go to a technical decision if he can't continue and it's been past the midpoint of the round. So the 3rd round plus, I think, is 1 second. So I think it would have to be there. Or if it was an intentional foul, it's a disqualification. I mean, and watching it again and watching the sequence, as we all have probably done 8, 9, 14, 83 times, Mark Smith, I would have also yelled down because that's what refs are kind of doing now when a fighter can't necessarily see on the other side to know if an opponent is grounded. He yelled down. Now, I don't know the extent of Petr Yan's English, but that's probably an early one that you learn for fighting another person, and knowing the rules are you can't hit someone when down. So down is bad. So X out the word down in your vocabulary. Coupled with the fact that his cornermen were shouting conflicting language about, yes, you can kick him, and no, stop, don't do that. I think it was Perumpa who was like, no, I forget exactly the specifics. I would have handled it this way, and it wouldn't be to take the title away or make it change hands, because that's not even a factor. The refs don't choose any of that. It is, at the end of the day, the promoter's responsibility for how they want to handle titles. There's nothing in the unified rules about title fights or about anything like that. It's specifically about rounds and time elapsed and types of fouls. So the UFC, had they chosen otherwise, they could decide a DQ does not result in a changed title, but a vacated title. That is within the UFC's right to do so, but it's not. But then again, this has never happened in a title fight. Don't be surprised if this language sneaks into something and we don't even know about it. Do not at all be surprised if this is a one-off thing and the UFC decides to change how it handles titles and something comes up and they go, oh, by the way, we changed it because we can, because we're the UFC. Because the Dana White's face was not a smile when he was wrapping the title on Aljo Sterling's face. It was on the level of when Tyron Woodley won and defended and fought. I believe it was when he fought the draw with Wonder Boy, and he was totally just ecstatic at the moment. Boy, he was loving it. It was the right way to handle it. It was an intentional foul. You saw Yan wind up. You saw the kadoosh side of the head. There's nothing to it. Maybe you guys have another take, another angle on it. But I'm firmly in the good work, Mark Smith. You got that one right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Jay. Anyone want to play devil's advocate here?
Well, first thing I'll say is if you put that hypothetical to me where like I'm Jay, but I'm darker, like a couple shades darker, I'm Mark Smith. What I would do is button my top button and hope people thought I was Darren Vallel. just in case I got the call wrong. So they blame somebody else. Just all I want to say is I love that Justin Gaethje, of all people, like within minutes of when the foul happened, his tweet went up on the screen where he said, "This should not be up to the fighter at all. Like, this shouldn't be, can you continue?" Because this wasn't like a cup shot or an eye poke. A cup shot, an eye poke, those are illegal under any circumstances. This was a technique that is normally legal that happened in a prohibited situation, and it was a fight altering strike. As far as I'm concerned, this fight was over as soon as it landed hard, and Sterling was clearly compromised. Like, there's no standing 8 count. There's no 5 minutes to recover from this. You know, that was a fight ending strike as soon as it happened. And I can't play devil's advocate. I thought the right call was made. It's a DQ. It sucks, but I mean, we're going to get an instant rematch, and you know, Sterling can either prove he deserved it, or Jan can prove that he, you know, never should have lost the belt in the first place.
You know, I don't know if I can go as far as play devil's advocate, because I kind of agree with you. I think Mark Smith did an admirable job in a situation that has no precedent, at least in a title fight, right? It's never happened before, except with the Anthony Smith John Jones thing, right? But again, I guess Anthony Smith sort of took that decision into his own hands. You know, protocol for this stuff needs to be better. We're right. It shouldn't come down to the fighter even having to make a decision. So Ben's right on that one as well. I wonder if he had said right away, or at least shortly after, you know, quicker than it took, besides, you know, checking on Aljo and taking all the time, can he recover? What if right away, within the first 30 seconds to a minute of the foul happening, he just said, send the physician over to check on him? While he's doing that, to all the judges, 2 points, 2-point deduction. I wonder, I still, because look, I'm a believer that Sterling really was hurt. I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, but I don't think he was milking it at all. I think he was hurt. I think he was exhausted. I think that was part of it as well. I think once he was down and on his back, he probably didn't want to get up. I know that sounds like you know, couch potato criticism, but he was really exhausted by the 4th round. And this is near the end of the 4th round. This is almost heading into the 5th. So he was super exhausted. I think once the adrenaline and everything just dumped, I mean, you add that in plus the damage from the attack. I honestly don't know how he could have gone on, but I do wonder if him and his team, if they heard a 2-point deduction to Jan, even not knowing the scorecards. You know, we know now that one of the judges had Sterling ahead 29-28. If a 2-point deduction had been thrown out there, I wonder if Team Serra-Longo would have been like, man, can we get Aljo up? You know, it's not our preference to do it, but 2 points down, you know, off the champion. Can we get him out there for the 5th round and see what happens? So I'm not saying that's what should have happened. I'm not playing devil's advocate. Now I'm just playing, like, you know, multiverse dabbler. It's not quite as catchy. Not quite as catchy.
I like your vocabulary, sir. I like your vocabulary.
Dude, I don't know. But yeah, in a scenario where because that definitely would have been worthy of 2 points being taken away. Yes. I wonder how different things would have turned out. We might have at least seen a draw if Aljo was able to go the distance, and maybe not a win, but we would have seen a draw. But again, I'm not criticizing Mark Smith for that. Really, really crazy situation.
You know, as interesting as that scenario is, Alex, like I'm glad that it ended with a DQ instead of a 2-point deduction, and then the fight continues on, because Aljo was so clearly compromised that you just don't want to send someone back out there like that. Granted, they are just getting hit to the head the entire time, but we like to keep that within the rules. And if you are going outside of the rules to achieve your success, well, it kind of disqualifies you from true success. So if you are the champion, you know, tough titty, like, you give up the belt, and that's just pretty much what it is in my opinion. Now I do want to kick it over to you guys to ask you this, because I as you know, have a bit of an anarchist streak in me, and I love to see the chaos. If I'm Aljamain Sterling, or if I'm anyone on his team, are you giving Jan the rematch right away, or do you want to stonewall this thing? Do you want to call out Jose Aldo? Do you want to, you know, call out Eddie Wineland? Do you want to just reach out to any aging vet that had a belt and say, Faber, hey, let's go, let's get it on? Do you want to go the carnival route and just milk this thing for all it's worth? Because, hey, that's what I'm thinking I'd do.
I could see.
We're all stuck here.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick. I'll say he already filmed a video with Cejudo, right? Sort of a video saying he would fight. So he's already kind of playing it up. You know, I do think he troll a little bit. If you're Aljo, I mean, would I prefer he does it? I mean, yes. But look, I'm not a fighter. I'm not in this position where I can kind of have a little fun with the situation. Where I'm taking a lot of crap. Frankly, you know, I know he's taking a lot of crap right now from all sides for it. And again, as long as at the end of the day, he's not going to be the one that makes the match anyway. So you certainly keep Jan in the sights because that's a fight. That's very likely the fight that's going to happen. You don't want to make the mistake of accidentally promoting stuff that's just not going to happen, like a Faber fight or like it was a Cejudo fight. Cejudo may never come back. So it's fun to do, but don't actually distract what might happen. You do want to, you know, make some bank with if you end up fighting Jan again.
Cruz fight maybe,
or a Cruz, right? Or a Cruz fight. He was victorious. I'm just saying, you know, his former champion. So yeah, I'd say play it up. I'd say have some fun with it because there's gonna be a lot of negativity coming his way, and I think, you know what, take advantage of a bad situation. And haters are gonna hate. You know, people are gonna be mad. Hoes gonna be mad anyway. So, but it's not gonna kill you to poke back a little bit. But no, I think he'll do the right thing in the end, and we'll see the rematch.
All right, Jay. Anything you want to say? I think I stepped on your toes a little bit there. Anything you want to say before we move on?
Well, it's okay. I actually wanted to clear the air about something else entirely. Not only do I have a little bit of the Tyler Treese in me, the chaos, the let's get crazy and open the dark hole and see what happens. You know, I really do sometimes want like the madness, like maybe TJ comes back and blows up the whole apple, you know, tips over the apple cart. But there's something I would actually like to address, and it's something that I have gotten some flack about, and I saw there was at least one eye roll on the panel about it. I had Aljo Sterling up 2-1 going into round 4, which means at the end of round 4, had it gone there and there were no point deductions, it would have probably been a tie ball game. And the reason why we all had, I believe, all the Short Dog scorers at least, had the second round to Sterling and the third round to Jan. Yes. Round 1 was closer to me than it was to most of the community. And I say that knowing that Sterling got dropped. I know he got knocked down and he was taken down pretty hard and he took some shots. But at the same time, Sterling outlanded him on the feet at least 2-1. It was a very wide margin, not even looking at the stats, whatever they are now. When I watched that first round, I saw Sterling pushing the pace, leading the dance, being more aggressive, and he got dropped. It was one of those weird rounds to me where I thought, okay, a guy got dropped, but he did most of the work otherwise to win that round. Now, I'm fine if you disagree and think I'm crazy. I'm curious as to why. Like Duffy, I know you have thoughts about round 1 in particular. I know you were talking to Schillen about how Keith Schillen on the Sherdog recap show about how it's crazy that people had it for Sterling.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a close. I thought it was a competitive round, but I did give that round to Jan. I don't think you're crazy for giving that round to Sterling necessarily. You know,
but that would mean that Sterling was leading the. Was winning the fight.
If you scored that one, then Sterling was ahead at the point the fight ended. Even if like clearly the momentum was going one way even before that knee landed, Sterling just seemed to be running on fumes. But, to bring back the hypothetical that Ant threw out of the 2-point deduction, we would have had a split decision win for Jan probably. Yeah. Even with the 2-point deduction. Yeah, because one of the official scorers had it 2-1 for Sterling. So even if that judge gave 4 and 5 to Jan, you subtract the 2 points. That is that's a Sterling scorecard. I think that would be less satisfying than what we got. I don't know.
I'm a bit all over the place with this one. Like, as far as I'm not mad, Jay, at your scorecard, because it certainly was closer than what it appeared. At least if you look at the statistics. And I know that's your thing, is looking at the numbers. And
but before I even looked at the numbers, when I was doing the Sherdog play-by-play, I gave the round to Sterling, and I was when I watched it again the second time, I still had it just by a whisker to Sterling, even though he got dropped. And I'm curious, and I know, and it was derided. And it was when the judges scorecard came out, it was either Mark Raimondi or Aaron Bronstetter who posted the official scorecard to that point. And people, I think it was Junicho Camacho, had it 2-1 for Sterling. And the MMA Twitter sphere, which of course is very rational and respectful and understanding, was livid that Sterling was winning that fight up until the beginning of the 4th round. So in other words, after 3 rounds had elapsed, Sterling up was a game breaker.
It's just, it doesn't seem that crazy to me, though. I mean, he was definitely landing more shots. They just weren't having the level of impact. So it comes down to, what do you value more, essentially? But I mean, it's very clear the momentum was far out of Sterling at that point. And credit to him for being that exhausted for that long and still being able to have a ridiculous amount of output. Like, he still was, except toward the end before he took that knee. I mean, those takedown attempts were horribly labored and telegraphed and no setup and whatnot. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the end, which is one reason why I'm glad that it ended with a DQ as opposed to questioning whether or not he could continue, and they have to they send him back out there like that, because he clearly was not of sound mind. And for him to already be at the point where he's pretty much out of there, and they do this again, like, just no thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add, it was Judge Ron McCarthy that was apparently the 29-28. Camacho was one of the 49-45s in the main event.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So it was Judge Ron McCarthy. And I'll say this. Look, I do a lot of criticism of Joe Rogan and the commentary team in general sometimes in the UFC. And I'll say in this case, I think they did a good job of sort of explaining why Sterling was maybe having some troubles, because we're talking about, could he have won the fight? He was very busy, hyperactive, you might almost say. Again, when people rewatch that, they'll be like, this guy is like, he's throwing out a lot of techniques. He's throwing a lot of techniques and doing a lot of stuff. And was wondering by like the second, like, is he going to be able to keep this up? Like, it's a smart game plan. You put the pressure on Jan for sure. But is he just being slightly inefficient with his movements, with his techniques? And so I want to give, as much as we criticize the commentary, especially when Rogan's on the call these days, I actually think they did a pretty good job picking up on that, sort of explaining that side of it. And it did somewhat play out that way. And as we saw by the time the fight ended, like we mentioned, the exhaustion that Sterling was clearly feeling. So those are definitely things to consider when judging. But you're right. But that doesn't mean that Sterling necessarily lost round 1. I certainly scored it for Jan, but the fact that he was inefficient and maybe a little wild at times doesn't mean he was losing. It just, didn't make as strong an impression on viewers as Jan's kind of, that cold, calculated efficiency and accuracy, right? Yeah.
That big shot did a lot of the difference. Yeah. And I will say, maybe it is entirely possible that I was influenced by his sheer massive act. Like, we're talking about a guy who outthrew Jan almost by a 4-1 measure. So, you see all these strikes going, you see this tornado of violence going at him, it's something. I don't know. I'm not really defending myself. It seemed so hostile towards the fact that how could Sterling be winning? And there was some context that people are forgetting, because they're thinking, how is Sterling winning? I saw him right before that. He was getting demolished in the 4th round. You don't count the 4th round because the 4th round hadn't finished yet. You can't score a round that hasn't been completed unless you're like Chris Lee, because he walks away halfway through. So I don't know. I think we're we're kind of close here. But I don't know. I think the rematch, I am curious to see if he does keep that hyperactive approach that you touched on.
One thing I'm more curious about when the rematch happens is what version of Aljo we're going to see, because we talked about, like, I was one of the people that picked Aljo to win this, and one big part of that was his very clearly improved boxing over his previous 2 or 3 fights or so. This looked a lot like the Aljo of old, who had pretty sloppy boxing technique and just kind of flailing his body in the form of punches, but having fantastic kicks and well set up takedowns. It was that weird blend that he kind of made his name on. So I wonder if he's going to be retooled with the hands and step in the cage like this. If it was more of like your first title fight jitters, as opposed to a genuine inability to perform at the standard that he otherwise would have needed to. So very interested to see what happens there, but I really hope he calls out Faber instead. So let's move on from this. Tim Elliott had quite the showcase against Jordan Espinosa. Part of this absolute annihilation on the mat was the whispering of sweet nothings in the form of domestic violence accusations and whatnot. Now, I did not get to see this fight live. I had to watch this on a replay, and a lot of what was said was muted out. Was that on the original broadcast? Was that entire exchange originally aired?
Yep.
On UFC Fight Pass, it was. On ESPN Plus, on ESPN Plus and ESPN2, they censored a lot of it because of concerns for profanity, I guess. But if you I think it's actually on UFC Fight Pass now. You can go to the prelims and see the walkouts, which were exceptional, and then you go to the fight itself. Now I'll point out something that I guess it came from our beloved Sherdog forums. The initial Facebook post of the woman who alleged the attack from Jordan Espinosa, and Tim Elliott heard about it and decided to take justice into his own hands and beat him up. And after that, I don't know if any of you listened to his post-fight discussion about Tim Elliott kind of apologizing and saying, "Man, I wanted to deal with it. If I wanted it to be between him and I didn't want anybody else to hear it." Well, you were fighting in an empty arena, which is very clearly known for every slap and every pop and every click you can hear now.
Surrounded by boom mics.
You're surrounded by things that are amplified to make sure that you can hear everything that's happening in the cage. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of the actual DV situation. I'm more thinking about I think it was Mark Smith, actually, again. He took it, and I believe it was after the end of the round, he went to Tim Elliott's corner and reprimanded him and said, "Hey, man, you're saying words, and we can't have you say words like that." Whatever the specifics were, I couldn't hear the entire exchange with him, but he basically said, "Don't say mean things in the cage. Don't say bad words in the cage." I'm curious if you guys, I know that there's been plenty of trash talk in the cage and middle fingers and stuff like that. Is that something that should just happen anyway? Or is it something that, you're punching each other, but don't say the bad words?
I don't know if I've ever seen something so detailed, though, like the conversation, because Espinosa also replied to him.
You don't know the whole story.
You don't know the whole story. They were actually having a conversation at the end of that round. You mentioned the Facebook, like you said, we won't go into the details. It's out there, people. It's the internet. If you want to find the allegations, it is certainly out there. We don't know all the details. We don't know sort of the this happened. I understand maybe at least 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes,
2018. Right. So we don't know. Right. So I'm not even sure what the aftermath of those actions were. Whether there was legal action, things like that. So if you guys have an update on that, please by all means say so. But again, I don't want to comment on that right now. I think Mark Smith's kind of doing the right thing. John McCarthy has spoken about in the past about how, of course, you allow for some degree of trash talk, but there is a point where it crosses a line. I don't know if this crosses a line in terms of like profanity or morality, but it does feel a little bit like something that's just inappropriate to discuss during a fight. I'm not trying to defend, again, if these allegations, there's any truth to these allegations, I'm not trying to defend Jordan Espinosa. I'm not saying, he shouldn't be called out in public. Okay, I'm not saying that. I am saying that, again, based on what little information we seem to have, and I think Tim Elliott I don't know if it was him who said that he was DM'd by this woman involved in this incident. That's a kind of an odd thing to bring to light, again, without unless he has more of the facts than we do. So that's a tricky thing. Again, like you said, he is on television. There is just certain lines you really have to be careful about crossing. This kind of came up a little bit with the Chris Gutierrez Andre Ewell fight. If you remember when John Anik brought up there was the custody situations that both guys were dealing with, and I'm not putting that in the same realm as a DV. I'm saying when that came up, a lot of people on social media were like, why are they bringing this? And both fighters have been very open about discussing it. So if you know their stories,
in the commentary booth of all places.
Yeah. When it was coming up like pre-fight interviews, I've spoken to Chris Gutierrez before. It's like, okay, that seems like a place for it. Bring it during a fight, tell that story during a fight is a very tricky thing to do, and there's a lot of reasons why you might want to bring those things again too much into public as well. So what I'm saying is taking that into account, taking the situation into account. These things are very complicated, and I'm like Mark Smith. I would lean towards maybe don't bring these things onto television where we can hear about it. There's certainly forms to discuss it. Social media, you can literally talk about whatever you want. If Tim Elliott wants to put on blast there, it certainly is right to do so. Again, I don't know if I'd approve, but he certainly can. But when you are in the octagon, when you're on essentially company property, you do have to think about things. But I just want to talk about, how about him bleeding on the dude's face? We've seen it before. I've never seen it this intentionally. In the third round, he was putting his head against it like a sponge, and you could see it leaking right into Jordan Espinosa's eyes. That was absolutely clearly intentional, and stems from this sort of bad blood. Did they shake hands after?
Ooh, nope. I don't think so.
No, I thought someone said they did. Okay, yeah. I'll have to watch that again. Okay.
I've seen it one time. I've only seen it one other time that I can remember actual intentional bleeding. I know because I looked it up because I wanted to find out when I found it on Fight Finder a couple of years back. It was Angela Magana was fighting Jessica Aguilar, and when she was beating on her, she was bleeding on her as well. And Angela Magana actually quit because the blood in her eyes. I remember that one, but it's a very unusual situation.
Yeah, I'm not. I can't say that I would be upset about this type of trash talking if I'm the referee, and maybe I think it's more so my own inherent biases, against like domestic violence. And Alex, not saying that you are approving of domestic violence at all. I know you are the exact opposite of that. And maybe I'm revealing too much of some of my prior deeds on air, but I've gotten into physical confrontations with guys who have put their hands on women, and it's something that I would very happily do all over again. If I had to relive those scenarios. So to see someone accused of that and getting beaten and manhandled and berated about it gave me a lot of personal satisfaction. So it's hard for me to, as if I were the referee, to say, yeah, don't do that. And then on top of that, they are punching each other, they are kicking each other, they are trying to physically harm one another in life-altering ways. I think as far as the line to be crossed with trash talking, I think if it starts getting into hate speech, I think that's when we have a problem. That's kind of the only point I would be upset with it.
Let me just say, you mentioned personal biases. I'll say, I think my personal biases come into it as well, because it's maybe my lack of I was so shocked, and my lack of familiarity with the allegations. I had never heard any inkling of these allegations. But let's be honest, if this is, listen. There's fighters I don't like. I don't like Mike Perry. I don't like Greg Hardy. Okay, I'm just gonna flat out say I've said it on other shows. Maybe it's an unprofessional thing to say. I don't like them. If someone was fighting Greg Hardy and I saw them trash talking, no lie, I would be like, I'd be like you. I'd be like, I'm good. I'm glad this guy's bringing this up and shoving his face as he's like beating on him. You know what I mean? And same with Mike Perry. So maybe it's only because we know a little bit more about those cases. The cases have, again, as far as we know, have gone through, a little more due process and things like that. We know the facts. So yeah, I will say lack of familiarity had to do also with my action too. So I will say Ernest Tim.
I mean, now that you mentioned it, Marcin Tybura is perhaps the greatest heavyweight of all time. So let's just throw that out there. But yeah, I think that's kind of the only thing that throws me off on it is this. Mm-hmm. I know I have gone this clear other direction in my real life. So if I were a referee and I saw some of my real life bleeding over into the cage, let it ride. All right, fellas. Any other thoughts on this before we move things along here?
Just real quick. My real issue with it is that I don't think that really falls within Mark Smith's purview. I would be all right with the promoter saying, "Hey, look, we go out on basic cable. You can't say these words, or you can't talk about this because we're gonna have to bleep you out. That affects our product." I don't think the ref should have anything to do with anything fighters say in the cage, other than yelling fire in a crowded theater, things like if saying he's tapping or he's out when he's not tapping or not out. That falls within the referee's purview to prohibit fighters from saying, or to penalize fighters for saying. If the UFC wanted to fine Elliott afterwards or give him some kind of reprimand, that's fine. But Otherwise, other than that, I don't see why it's any of the referees' business what they're talking about in there.
Because a unified rule does say using abusive language in the fighting area is a foul, an actual official demarcated foul. You can't use using quote abusive language. I mean, like it would be. It's a good question that Ant you raised about hate speech. Like if Conor was fighting Khabib and he talked about the wife and the whole towel thing like he did before the fight, that's crossing that line into there's religious bias and the issues there. It's man, it's something. Who knew we'd have these weird things to talk to after a fight? Talk about after a fight night.
It's a Mark Smith show. It's the Mark Smith show episode for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Mark Smith got a lot of love on the broadcast. So, all right, fellas, let's move things along to our Eating Crow segment. This is where you break out your seasoning salt, your Old Bay, your ground pepper, whatever puts a nice flavor on the crow that you have. So, I'm gonna start with our guest, Mr. AK-47. What has you eating crow this week?
How many servings of crow am I allowed to have? Because I could not have been more wrong about so many of these call predictions. Where to begin? We'll just maybe go with the top three because I probably have 10 bullet points of things I got wrong from this card. Number one, I picked two of the. Well, I mean, I was gonna say I picked two of the three title fights wrong, but I mean, I did pick Aljamain Sterling to win, and I also picked Israel Adesanya to win. Technically, Aljamain Sterling won, but obviously, we're not really going to count that. I do think that he was losing the fight. We've discussed the scoring enough as it is, but certainly that prediction was not looking strong going into the fifth round, the hypothetical fifth round, and then and Israel Adesanya once again. I counted out Jan Blachowicz, so I was wrong there. I also was I brutally wrong on. I was like. Fight of the night is going to be. There's 15 fights I could have picked, and some of them were many of them were very good, had exciting finishes. But I thought
Santos, didn't you?
I said the fight of the night was going to be Rakic versus Santos. Yep. I had a whole breakdown. I said I love the style matchup. I love what both guys are going to prove, and it was the one fight. I'm not going to call it boring, guys. I'm not going to call it boring.
It was boring, Your Honor.
It was not. It's not boring, but it was probably the farthest from the fight of the night that you could have gone of the 15 fights that happened on Saturday. So I am eating that crow big time. Just so many. I'm just looking at so many other fights I got wrong. So you know what? Let's stop there. My mouth is already full with crow. Fight of the night, completely wrong, and definitely my. Heck, let's throw Megan Anderson in there as well because I said I'm the same way. She was going to give Nunes problems. I thought she was going to hurt her. I thought she was going to hurt the champion. She is going to hurt the champion. She did not hurt the champion. I don't know if anyone saw that. She took one right hand and it was pretty much over from there.
She hurt the champ's knuckles, apparently.
Badly. Just wait till the medical suspensions come out. All right, 6 months for Nunes, minimum 6 months. Just wait.
All right. Jay, what's got you eating crow this week?
It's a battle of Brazilians, and I was so wrong. It hurts. It hurts so much. I was going with the striker versus grappler matchup, and I thought the grappler was going to take it. The grappler, in fact, did not take it, as Amanda Lemos beat the brakes off of Livinha Souza. Now, I've been watching Livinha Souza since her time with Invicta for her big long stretch. I guess it was only 5 fights, but I felt more than that. Where she beat up Deanna Bennett, she beat up Katja Kankapa. Great, very impressive talent whose basically only slip had been a really close fight with Angela Hill and a surging Brianna Van Buren. I thought she was going to get the takedown. I know that Amanda Lemos is very strong. She used to fight at bantamweight and moved to strawweight, even though there's a flyweight in between. Like, Jessica Andrade did not have that luxury back then. So she dropped down 20 pounds and she kept that strength. Officially, maybe Livinha Souza went for a takedown, but I don't think she really did because there was absolutely nothing there for her. And it was the kind of performance where you go, okay, this one fighter does not like being punched in the face, and that's all that's happening. And she got dropped a couple times, and Lemos, man, I am watching her now. I am expecting impressive things from her. I know she lost to Leslie Smith, but where does Leslie Smith fight now? I think she fights at 145 pounds now in Bellator, and Amanda Lemos is 115 pounds in the UFC. I'm not going to excuse that loss, but I'm going to push that loss over here. She's Amandina which is obviously a great nickname, is going to be one to watch out for. And I didn't see that happening. So that crow is very tasty.
All right, Ben, what you eating crow with this week?
Well, kind of like Alex on a night that I went 7 for 15 for my picks, like literally worse than a coin flip. There's a whole buffet of crow for me to pick from, but there can only be one on this particular night, and it's going to take the form of basically a direct acknowledgement and apology, because on the Sherdog official preview show, I predicted that Aalon Cruz would defeat Uros Medic. Now, I knew I was taking a little bit of a flyer on this one. Medic was, was a comfortable favorite for a reason, but I reasoned that, I hadn't seen enough of Medic against really solid opposition. He feasted on some fairly low-level guys in AFC, and I figured Cruz is probably the best fighter he will have fought, including his win on Contender Series. I don't know what Medic's gas tank as a Titanic lightweight is going to look like in a 3-round fight against a good fighter. I don't know what his takedown defense and defensive grappling will look like if he's put to it. So I went with like the slight flyer pick on Cruz, and somebody from Anchorage BJJ reached out to my co-host Keith and let us know that we were idiots and didn't know the first damn thing about MMA. He meant me because I was the only one who picked Cruz, and damn, and I don't know if it was Ryder Spatafore or Matt Stout or someone else on staff, but whoever it was, I apologize for doubting your mans, because that fight was 100 seconds long and it literally went twice as long as it needed to. It was a full minute of just Cruz getting knocked around the ring like a grocery store bag in the wind as Medic beat the living shit out of him. All of my questions still remain, but he certainly passed that first test with flying colors. I'm excited to see what Medic does next. Anchorage BJJ, thanks for listening to the show, and my apologies.
Ben, don't laugh when people bring up that Alaska FC. Those dudes are serious. Those dudes, that Alaska FC, that's a decent promotion. And you're right. The people up there, I mean, the people who watch that promotion, they're little, just watch out. They're listening. They know when people are talking about Alaska FC. They know.
So y'all said it a bunch of times so they can jump in the mentions here. All right, good work. Play the algorithm. All right, so my eating crow comes courtesy of the Sterling Yan fight, simply because of the I wouldn't say I disrespected Yan, but I certainly underestimated him. Now, I was quick to point out how I know Sherdog has done this, and I believe one other website, and I can't recall which one off the top of my head, but he was ranked below Sterling, Cejudo, and I think Sandhagen maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the rankings, and it's kind of unusual that a champion will be ranked below. But I was firmly of the camp, well, there's a reason why. And looking at the strength of schedule, and I also just saw things playing out differently. I thought that Sterling would be able to out wrestle him better. I thought that the gap with his hands would make Jan's boxing very, very difficult to pull off. And damn it, I was wrong on just about every count on that fight from a technical aspect. So I guess my analysis game is super trash. So I'll go ahead and eat that crow with a smile. All right, gentlemen, so we are going to move things along to the greatest title segment in all of media history. That is, I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the past week. So, Jay, I'm going to start with you this time. What is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I'm feeling a little overloaded from all the UFC talk right now. And I'll take a step outside of the octagon, a giant leap across the ocean to a ring instead of a cage, because there was a co-promoted event that happened in Phuket, Thailand, and it was called Bareknuckle Kingdom, and it was promoted by Bareknuckle FC, who is the beloved organization that we know that Paige Van Zandt is the champion for. Oh, hold on, wait, I'm getting word that she got smoked in her last fight. And Full Metal Dojo, who has recently brought to us such gems as Fight Circus 2, and the upcoming Fight Circus 3, Fisting for Dollars. So, needless to say, they have my attention, they have my heart, and I tuned into BKK, Bareknuckle Kingdom, and where they brought a bunch of their talent from Fight Circus over to Bareknuckle to say, hey guys, do you want to try this out? So basically the event was a bunch of Muay Thai fighters and some Lethwei fighters, which is Bareknuckle Muay Thai with headbutts, and kickboxers and MMA fighters, and said, here, let's kind of, mix them up and see what happens. Let me tell you what, with an extra W on that, all of the violence, it was exactly what you wanted it to be. It's about 86 degrees in Phuket, in the blazing sun with a heat index of 100 and change. A fight ended by heat exhaustion. There were multiple doctor stoppages, violent knockouts, nonsense, crazy violence, and exactly what the doctor ordered. It just, every possible way it could deliver, it did. And then John Nutt was also obviously the MC of the whole affair, who is my personal successor to Bruce Buffer. Sorry, Joe Martinez. It just, BKK hit all the notes. It checked all the boxes, and fisting for dollars in April is going to be one for the record books.
I can't get over the name of that event. Alex, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I'm so happy to have to see Fight Circus and a Full Metal Dojo represent John, and of course our boy John Nutt represented. Thank you, Jay, for handling that for me. Look, I can't stop talking about 259. So I'm not surprised is I'm not surprised at the fan reaction to the whole Jan Sterling controversy. I want to be surprised, guys. As soon as it happened, and I said, I'm like, this fight's over. There was a part of me, guys. There's a part of me that's like, you know what? The fans are going to be sympathetic to what happened here to Aljo. They're going to be sympathetic to Jan. They're going to know Jan made a mistake. It wasn't malicious. Maybe it was, but maybe there'll be some people think Jan made a mistake, and they're going to say Sterling, darn it, he tried his best. He tried his best to get up, but obviously he took a vicious knee. He shouldn't get up. Let us have empathy. Let us have sympathy. Let us understand why he's the bantamweight champion now. No, that is not how things went, guys. Obviously we have a new meme, guys. We have a new meme. So many people, Aljo the actor. He's an act. Give him the Oscar. I've seen like 1,000 give the Oscar. Each one more funny than the last, by the way. Every time someone says, here's a clip of him acting. I think someone in my comments called him, and this took me a while, Aljamain, and then had a clip. And had a clip from Jim Carrey in The Mask, that exaggerated that scene from that. And I was even with the clip, I was like, is it an autocorrect? Like Jim Carrey? And I'm like, oh, The Mask. Okay, so it took me a second. Guys, this is a fan base that still talks about Khabib tiramisu, Mackenzie Dern's accent. This is not going to go away, and that sucks. That sucks that every time Aljo fights, he could win the rematch. He could rattle off 2 more title defenses, 3 more title defenses. There's just going to be this vocal segment of people that every time is like, did he act way to another win? 2-time Oscar winner, Aljamain Sterling, good for him. At least I saw someone mix it up with Emmy. Someone threw Emmy in there, which is great. Thank you, guys. A Golden Globe would have been nice, but I'm not surprised at all that we saw this, and that from now on he's going to have to. There's again very vocal minority. I always say that. And there's a lot of good fans out there. We are going to be hearing a lot of Aljo acting, Oscar talk, whatever, for the rest of eternity, and I cannot wait.
So one thing the MMA community certainly doesn't like is a vocal minority. So I'm gonna share my I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week. It comes courtesy of former bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, who instantly kind of went on the same route that Alex was talking about, as far as showing absolutely no empathy toward a man who was concussed in an illegal manner and was ruled out of competition from there, thus disqualifying his opponent and awarding him the belt. Dillashaw took to Twitter to instantly give his reaction, calling him an actor and whatnot. And I just wanted to highlight that because you don't really have much ground to stand on if you still have the syringe hanging out of your ass. So that means that, yeah, I'm not surprised that TJ Dillashaw is out here desperately clinging to the idea that he deserves a title fight coming off of a steroid suspension. So Ben, I'm going to kick it over to you now. What is your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, leaving aside individual fight outcomes that I got wrong this weekend at UFC 259, of which there were many, the last thing I expected to find myself saying on Sunday morning was, damn, Dominick Cruz looks like a top 10 bantamweight right now. But nonetheless, I woke up saying exactly that. Casey Kenny was the first unranked opponent Cruz had to face in approximately 300 fights. And it's because all of the Dominick Cruz benefit of the doubt was gone by this point. He had looked compromised in his last couple of fights. He was 35, an age when even bantamweights who do not have rejected cadaver tendons in their knees tend to be losing a step in a division where speed kills. I thought for a step outside the top 10 to the edges of the top 15, by the standards of the fighters that are there, Casey Kenny was kind of a miserable style matchup for him. I was proven wrong. Like, Cruz looked fantastic. His movement was on point. His cardio was on point. He continued to show himself to be one of the most intelligent fighters ever to do this. You know, just even unleashing new wrinkles, new looks. When was the last time we saw Dominick Cruz do as much kicking as he did in the first round of that fight? Then, you know, turn the jets on with his, you know, extremely underrated offensive wrestling late in the fight. Just outclassed Casey Kenny. I'm not going to rush him back into the title picture, but it's worth pointing out that TJ Dillashaw, whom we just finished talking about, is going to come back soon, and he's probably no more than one fight away from the title shot, despite having been away for 2 years, despite having almost as many question marks hanging over him as Dillashaw or as Cruz does. You know, Cruz might not be that far away, and that is the last thing I expected to find myself saying or thinking right now.
Why don't they make Cruz versus TJ in a 5-round fight for an eliminator? If they're going to try and come up that works, why don't they do that? I mean, unless they're really mad at Cruz for saying mean things about an idiot. I mean, a guy on Twitter. I don't know.
Yeah, that was so I mean, while we're on the subject, just some quick thoughts here. Like, Dominick Cruz took pretty much all of his post-fight time in front of the microphone. I believe he did this too at the post-fight presser. I mean, he took a lot of time to go against the head of Monster Energy. Is it Hans Molenkamp? How to pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Of their MMA division.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do we feel about that? Like, do you think the promotion is gonna like retaliate, because they just signed a huge multi-million-dollar deal with them, emphasis on the multis, and Dana White was less than enthusiastic to give more life to that discussion post fight. So do you think Cruz is going to be in a little trouble here?
So this was another tangled web from the show. Sorry, Jay, I had to mention it because the esteemed EKC Leiden from our site immediately after tweeted that he thought it was kind of a piss take. He thought that Cruz and Molenkamp are chums, and that this was really just a way to kind of promote. And in a weird way, it kind of did, because more people now know who Hans Molenkamp is than ever. And it's funny because in the post-fight at the press conference, Cruz said it's clout chase. He's using media for himself, and I'm like, are you not? Is this not exactly what he wants? You're calling him out for a charity event. So I don't know if Casey kind of later said like, he kind of second guessed himself, but I don't know if he was on the wrong track here. Definitely, but I mean, I think it definitely is a little more serious than that. I know Monster did release a statement today, or the UFC did. Either way, officials upstairs have said we are going to investigate some of these things that Dominick Cruz has been saying. We take these things very seriously. So I don't think it can be a gag if it goes that far. But yeah, the handling of it was very strange and kind of almost giving this guy exactly what he wanted. I don't know if you felt the same way, Jay.
You know, I wouldn't go so far to say it was quite kayfabe, because, you bad guy, I hate you. But he brought up, Molenkamp and discussed him at length, to which I had known of him only because of some of the antics that he had done, the Conor photo shoot, the Conor stealth sneak up and take some pictures and run away kind of thing. I'll admit something, and this isn't going to look good for me, but I'm going to admit this. I learned a new word on Saturday night, well, a new phrase, clout chaser. I had no idea what that was. There was no concept to me that attached to that. So when I learned about what that was, I go, that is exactly what this guy is. Like, I've seen his sneak ups and his taking pictures with so-and-so and he's best buddies with this person. I had seen Dana White's past evisceration of this guy, tearing this guy to shreds, saying, you don't know anybody. I met you through Tiki with a picture of a shirt that you made me wear or something stupid like that. So when Dana White and Ali Abdelaziz both trash on you for being a scumbag, you're not going to be viewed in the best light on any circumstance. Not even bringing my own personal feelings into this, the comments of these people that are notorious for having judgment issues and personal issues that cloud them, saying, no, this guy's a bad guy, that's not a good look for anybody. People know who he is now, but I don't think people like him anymore. I think this is the kind of thing where, I'm sure, I don't know if we have any place to talk about this, but if Dan Hardy loses his job with the UFC for a very a disagreement as to what Hardy calls it, I can't imagine Dominick Cruz is going to be a commentator much longer if the UFC is trying to look and respect the whole monster deal. I feel you picking a fight with this major sponsor is going to probably get you the elbow drop off the top rope. So at least Cruz has a top 10 opportunity in the future, because otherwise, I don't know.
Yeah, good point there. I mean, he could very well go the Jamel Hill ESPN route, considering the level of money that's involved between the UFC and Monster. So with that being said, let's move things along to the speed bag. This is where I get to flex my authority on you mofos. So I'm going to bring up the clock to 10 seconds. You each will have that amount of time to answer a few questions. And of course, every time I do now, my phone is acting slow here. There we go. That's the setting we need. So I'm going to begin with you, Ben, on this first question. Aljo appears to be celebrating with his new belt. How do you feel about that?
I feel fine. He was despondent in the immediate aftermath of the fight. If he's celebrating now, I think they're probably both genuine. He's probably feeling a lot of different things.
Jay.
I watched today, actually not long before the broadcast. Aljo did a 25-minute discussion on his thoughts on it. I advise you all go listen to that.
Alex.
Belts are props. He owns that prop now. I said this on Twitter, and I almost never swear on Twitter. You can do whatever the F you want with it.
Oh, harsh language there, Alex. Harsh language. We don't use that fucking language here on the Walkout.
Oh my God, my ears.
All right. Next question. I will begin with you, Jay. The PFL is containing its season in a bubble in Atlantic City, requiring fighters to check in 17 days before their fight. Will this work to preserve their tournament? There we go.
PFL had issues keeping the tournament together last year. 17 days check-in. They have fights that come together sooner than then. I don't think this will make any different.
Alex.
I think it'll help, but I'm hearing some rumbling, some consternation from the fighters. So hopefully everyone's into the idea and they show up. That's really the issue.
Ben.
Yeah, I mean, Lance Palmer is already fleeing the country. I can tell you that right now. This is not going to help. They've not been able to make these seasons work even before COVID.
Oof.
All right, good points said all around. So the next question, Alex, you will take the first crack at this one. The UFC unceremoniously released Alistair Overeem and Junior Dos Santos last week. Will more big names like them see their places on the roster revoked soon?
Yeah, definitely. I look up for guys like Jacare Souza, other high-priced veterans. People should be looking out. That prediction at the end that he'll be released, that's of last year, that's carrying over into this year.
Yay.
UFC 259, we're going to lose a name. We're going to lose Megan Anderson, or we're going to lose Joe Benavidez. I'm feeling that.
Ben.
Absolutely. The UFC's been clearing cap room, even though there's no cap for like the last 6 to 12 months. It would have been Cruz if he'd lost. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So now I'm going to switch the clock over to 30 seconds, and I will answer all these questions in succession. The clock will begin after reading the first question. So Aljo appears to be celebrating with his new belt. How do you feel about that? I feel fucking fantastic about it. I think it's hilarious. I love it. I hope he continues to troll everyone and screw everyone who disagrees. PFL containing their season in Atlantic City in that bubble. Like, you couldn't pick a better city than Atlantic. city to go to for a bubble. Jesus Christ. And Overeem and JDS are just going to be a few of the names released. I honestly think after that monster thing, Cruz might be on the chopping block if he were to lose soon. But Woodley, I think, is the next guy to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Dang.
yeah, man. The names that they've let go, it's open season, so no one is safe. No one is safe at all. And especially when just like they were letting Dan Hardy go off of some disagreement. He is by far like the best analytical mind on that staff. Yeah.
I don't want to talk on it too much more because we had 10 seconds to talk about it, but I feel like the UFC is developing a pattern of the fighters they're getting rid of in those that had their crack at the title and aren't going to get another one because they keep knocking off contenders. Notice Junior Santos, Alistair Overeem, both guys who flirted with the title picture did get it. Yoel Romero, Jussier Formiga. The names are starting like this. That's why I feel Joe Benavidez and Megan Anderson, not that I want them to go, but it's just the UFC seems to be wanting to get rid of fighters that are at the top. Liz Carmouche is a perfect example of a contender destroyer non-champion. And the UFC seems to be in this pattern of wanting to clear that out.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Jermaine Duran to me is like...
she needs to fight Holly Holm. The loser might get cut.
Yeah. Yo,
I mean... Yeah, GDR might be the best thing for her though, because there's actual division, featherweight division in Bellator. She wants to just stop cutting weight. So
what to fight Cyborg?
Well, that's a fight that we wanted to see originally. Yes, please. Yes, please.
And even a woman from the literal land of horse meat is like, no, I'm not fighting that chick. Dude, I completely missed that the PFL bubble is in Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Like having grown up in Maryland, like Ant did, I'm thinking of Atlantic City. I'm like, dude, you're going to find some scrawlings on a hotel wall, like lockdown day 11. I must be going crazy. All the street names here are like Monopoly property names. And that's like, I can't imagine 17 days in Atlantic City.
Yeah. Dead bodies floating up on the beach.
Well, guys, I'll say thank goodness for, Bare Knuckle FC, Ryzen, stuff like that. Because look, I'll say cherish your favorites now while they're in the UFC. Like we said, you really don't know who could be gone within the next 3 or 4 months. I know it's a crappy thing to say, but it's true. It's true. Especially a certain veteran, just someone who will be safe. I like a Donald Cerrone is a company favorite. I think you'll see him around for a while. But even him, with the if a streak goes the wrong way, you really could see them. I'd be very doubtful. I'd say he's one of the safer veterans who's making a good amount of money. But even him, think about that. Even Donald Cerrone, I would say, is not safe. That's the kind of situation we're living in now at the UFC. But again, guys, that UFC's loss is Bare Knuckle FC's gain. So
I swear the biggest like exclamation point on this whole thing was Rumble Johnson to me, because you beforehand, if this was going on 3-4 years ago, I wouldn't be too upset about it, because like, all right, well, he's lost twice to Cormier, probably not going to win a belt. All right, I get where they're going, although I don't agree with it. But now the one guy that was his kryptonite at 205 is gone, is retired. John Jones having so little to do at 205 that he decides to move up to heavyweight. Oh, by the way, Rumble has a quality win at heavyweight over Andre Arlovski. Like, this guy fits so perfectly in that puzzle right now, and they let him go. So they really don't give a damn. Like, they really are just trying to clear space for whatever reason. So, but let's move things along here. The UFC is yet again giving us a 15-fight extravaganza. This is is this UFC Vegas 21? I think will be the hashtag that we're using Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So Leon Edwards makes his long-awaited return. Not who we thought it was going to be. We thought he was going to fight Tyron Woodley. We thought he was going to fight Wonder Boy at one point was discussed, and Khamzat Chimaev, of course, was officially booked. But instead, he will be fighting Belal Muhammad, who for the first time will be fighting someone in the top 10. Let's just our initial thoughts on this matchup. Do you think the winner gets a title shot here?
No, that's all I have to say.
Definitely not Belal, right? And unless Belal gets like a 30-second KO, that's the only chance. But I think we all see this one very likely going to a decision. So it's very hard to see. And Leon has had his own issues with negotiating big fights with the UFC, so I don't see it happening, unfortunately.
You know what? I'll jump out there on the opposite direction here. Belal Muhammad, if he wins, I think we got a title shot coming here. When you look at all the names that Usman has already picked off, do we want to see retreads? I mean, I know they've been discussing the Masvidal thing, but if that were to fall apart for whatever reason, I mean, Wonder Boy's the only name he hasn't fought, at a certain rank, and Chiesa, I believe. So Belal Muhammad with a fantastic win just might go and steal that. And then also considering who his manager is, same manager as Kamaru Usman, all those fights are a lot easier to make. So that wouldn't surprise me so much. And Leon Edwards, if he wins, unless something really crazy happens with one of the more, I guess, sexier names in the division, can you keep denying him at this point, especially when the champion is saying that he wants to fight him and he's very respectful of him, and and this is a fight that Usman wants to revisit? I think it makes sense. Whether or not making sense has anything to do with the UFC's current state is a whole other story, but just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, good. Don't dare oppose me on my show. I like it.
I like the optimism. I'd love to see a fresh challenge. I think both guys, I mean, I think they're deserving. I just think they're both a bit of a hard sell. We talk about before about MMA fans having an incredible long-term memory with things, and Leon is still to again a large segment of the fans. He's the 3-piece and a soda guy, right? I mean, which is the dumbest thing. People are like, why would he get a title fight? Didn't Masvidal already beat him? And it's like, that's my fan voice, by the way. So I apologize to the fans out there who are mocking, but that's how they view him, which is so silly. And a decision win over Belal Muhammad isn't going to erase that. People are still going to be like, well, Masvidal is better than him anyway. Usman mentioned the Masvidal fight. Obviously, he called up for Masvidal himself. Why are we doing this? Why would Edwards jump the line? So I like the optimism, and I want to believe that's true. I'd be fine with either of these guys getting a title shot. I think it's a very tough sell.
All right. Well, Jay, yeah.
I know that the UFC is going to try desperately to make Colby Covington get the next shot over either of these two, no matter what. Leon Edwards could hit a Shoryuken, and we'd go, okay, maybe no, Colby or Masvidal are bigger, better sells. It's just the way the UFC is working. It's like a talking head, stop making sense kind of way. It just doesn't. It's all broken. It needs to stop. It needs to be flipped on its head, shaken up a few times, hit a couple of times on the side, and fixed. Because it's whatever they're doing. I don't know if it's working, but it doesn't feel like it's working.
All right, good points there. So let's move things along here. So we're going to conclude the show by just giving one fight that you want to highlight for whatever reason on this card, whether it's a sleeper fight of the night or just a fighter in particular that you're looking forward to see. I will begin simply because I don't trust that this option will remain if I let everyone go before me. So I'm going to highlight Eryk Anders versus Darren Stewart because this is the epitome of this could be the best thing ever or the worst thing ever. I honestly have no idea how to break this fight down. And quite frankly, I'm concerned that it can be the most slow-paced, just stare fest in the world, or we might have an epic level of violence that just makes us drool with murderous intent. So, Alex, I'll kick it to you. What is one fight on this card that you'd like to highlight?
I think I might be stealing one from Jay and Ben now, because I'm got to look at this Manel Cape Matheus Nicolau fight. Nicolau, for one thing, is a guy who never should have been cut in the first place. He has a win over a convincing win over, what was it, convincing? Obviously, I'll admit I haven't watched in a while. You know what? Look, I don't want to lie to America. He has a win over John Moraga. Let's put it flatly. And again, a one-time flyweight title challenger, and a guy who was really good at 125 pounds, a worthy title challenger. So that was big. He never should have been released. He was kind of part of the cull, the flyweight cull, for which the nonsensical of getting rid of the flyweights, which thankfully was over now. I'm amazed how quickly it feels like the company has lost faith in Cape. Because he lost the fight with Pantoja, which there's no shame in that. But they did a really good job of kind of promoting him beforehand. He was that replacement on Fight Island for one of the title fights. They were kind of on doing the Cape thing right, taking a guy from another company and promoting him right. And then he loses. I don't even think they've announced this fight, that Cape is stepping in as a repliplement to fight Nicolau. Which is bizarre to me. Someone told me they saw it. They think they saw it in a press release. I never saw it. They have this is a thing they should tweet. This is a big deal. It's almost like they're hesitant now. Like they felt like they were maybe they sold a bag, a bill of goods for the Cape Pantoja fight, but he's a really exciting fighter. And I think they should get behind promoting this one. It could be a fight of the night potential. And Nicolau is also very good too. Why not give him some promotion as well? So really excited for that flyweight fight.
Yeah, they thought they bought Justin Gaethje. Turns out it was Hector Lombard. Ben, what's one that you want to highlight on this card?
There are a bunch of interesting ones, but I will throw out Hani Yahya versus Ray Rodriguez. Hani Yahya is 36, and in some ways, it's surprising to me that he's only 36 because it feels like he's just been around forever. I mean, we know at this point what we have with the guy. He's an oddball, but he is an old school grappling, like an old school submission specialist, not just a grappler, but a submission specialist that on any given night gives you a possibility of seeing something you rarely see in MMA, just, strange techniques. And he's taking on a guy in Rodriguez that is also very much a grappler by preference. He's a guy down here from Texas. He's from Ohana Academy, probably San Antonio's top MMA gym. People who disagree will beat me up at the next Fury event that I go to. But while they're an all-around MMA gym, turn out good grapplers. So I expect either an absolute grappler's delight where both guys are just really going for broke, or of course your prototypical mediocre kickboxing match between two grapplers who don't want to go to the ground. But I'm betting on the former. I don't know how much divisional relevance this has, but this is my sleeper for either a fight of the night or a performance of the night for the winner.
All right, good one there. Jay, believe it is your turn.
Man, I love me some Hani Yahya. This is a guy who doesn't even have a TKO or knockout by accident. Like even Damian Maia knocked a guy out and then got wins by injury. But still, even Damian Maia stopped somebody with strikes. Hani Yahya says, no, screw that. I'm going to choke him out every time. But in the vein of the knockout, I present one fight that I knew nobody would take. And it's because people look at it and go, ew, I don't know about that one. I am excited, truly, actually non-ironically excited about Ben Rothwell versus Felipe Lins. I don't know what it is that brings it out of me other than that I know how these guys approach fights. And they don't always approach fights cerebrally, especially in the UFC. And Ben Rothwell is the prototypical give one or take two to give one. He's that kind of guy. And he will walk forward into the fire and go up against a guy he probably outweighs by 30 pounds at least. And it's going to be a silly rock'em sock'em first round knockout mess. And I think Rothwell's chin still has enough in the tank, but it just seems like one of those nonsense, I wish I were a slobber knocker kind of fight. And I am all for that. It is that heavyweight knockout friendly fight that the UFC puts on the main card to say, here's something dumb that's going to happen. And I am here for the dumb thing that's going to happen. So give me more of that.
As long as that dumb thing isn't one of those Dungeons and Dragons post-fight interviews, I'm okay with it. Oh, God, it just makes me cringe. All right. So that will do it for this edition of Unleashed. Big thank you. Oh, whoa, Ben. Ben.
We do have a statement from Amanda Nunes.
The GOAT funds its way back. Jake Riggs is going to have that tattooed on him soon. So I think he just really, really wanted that tattoo. That's a whole nother story. I will be sure to absolutely clown him all over Body Lock stuff. So big thank you to the homie AK-47 for jumping on the show today. You can find his work at MMAfighting.com. Of course, Jay and Ben, wonderful work as always. You can check them out on sherdog.com. And myself, you can find me on the Body Lock and MMA on Point. So, what do I normally say to wrap this up? Oh, yeah, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend and tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay following the rules. Don't need people in the head when you're not supposed to. And by all means, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.